Well, greetings and salutations. Welcome into another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. We are goonless, but we are also getting ready on game day, which I think is a first for the Goon and Ironhead Show. I don't know where we would have had another opportunity over the years, so it is kind of cool.
The 2001 season, right? Was the last time Penn State was scheduled to play a Thursday game.
Yeah, it's it's different. I do think, as James Franklin was saying, that if you're going to play a Thursday game, play it in the opening game of the season, right? Because it does. Yes. It really affects virtually zilch. I get before the academic people, well, they're going to miss 3 days of classes, and they're not actually going to miss 3 days of classes.
Wait till they find out about the road trip to USC and UCLA.
Yes. But in the overall scheme of things, schedule-wise, again, if you're going to have a Thursday night game, do it on the road. First game of the season gives you a couple of extra days to get ready for the second game, which, I think I heard somewhere that you make your most improvement between the first and second game.
Wise man. Very words.
So, listen, I do think that is all good things for Penn State. I was just talking with a buddy of mine as I was pulling into the parking lot here at Quaker Steak Lube about the season prospects, and as always, everybody agrees it's going to come down to the offensive line. Can you get – and, my take on it is, again, it would be wonderful to have a stalwart offensive line. I think if you can have a middle-of-the-road Big Ten offensive line performance, everything else to me is in place. Health, obviously, being the X factor here. Yeah, sure. I think everything else is in place for this team to have a shot at a 10-win season. Now, having a shot and going out and doing it, because you're going to have to get to 10 wins, beat everybody but Ohio State and Michigan on the schedule, or upset one of those teams and drop to a Michigan State or a Auburn or whatever. But
I'll tell you,
all of this I do think is predicated on you have to get off to a good start tonight. This has to be a W at the end of the game tonight. This has to go in the W column, and then you focus on what else needs to happen for this to be a successful season, however you define successful season.
I will tell you what. If you are watching AT&T Sports Pittsburgh, like we are right now, you'll see the obligatory PSU pregame show. You'll see my season record prediction later on in the hour. If you're local or you're in Eastern half of the state, don't worry about it. 7 o'clock tonight before the game starts, catch them on NBC Sports Philly.
Heck yeah.
But I'm not too bullish on the team's prospects when I made my prediction. But you know what? You're feeling positive. It's game day. I'm going to roll with the positivity. So I am not going to be gloomy 7-5 Gus here on the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. I'm going to try to look at the positive side because, to your point, it does feel like there's just a couple of key games that you look at them and you're like, man, that could tip either way. That road trip to Auburn, this game tonight. There are just a couple of key inflection points in the season where Penn State could go in a really positive 10-plus win direction or trend the other way. And to your point about health and injury, I think one thing the Nittany Lions have going for them this year that maybe they didn't as much last year, James has talked about it a lot this summer, is depth. The strength of that recruiting class that came in, the readiness of those guys to play, the opportunity for interior linemen like Keziah Azard and Devon Elise to play because they had to when P.J. Mustafa went down with injury last year. Now all of that is going to reap benefits for this team because all of a sudden you have guys who maybe had to play a little bit early last year or came in from high school ready to play at the Big Ten level as true freshmen because we had a good recruiting class, and your 2 deep looks a heck of a lot better than it did last year.
There are a lot of fun, I think, prop bets or just things that you can watch for in tonight's game. But I want to throw out a couple to you, Booch. I just want to throw out a couple to you because, again, I was just talking with my one buddy, and now I'm kind of getting juiced. Not that I wasn't already, but I've been. It's been a hectic little day, which is a good thing in many ways because it's kept me occupied, and I haven't been able to spend time.
We have both been like. It is funny, just not to get too much into off-camera stuff, but you and I have both had so much crazy stuff going on in our lives. Like, truly, our brains are not totally functional. Do you realize we sat and talked for 15 minutes on last week's show about 2 losses in the 1981 season, which did not occur?
It was 83, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, somebody left a comment on the Facebook page, and I was like, God, is that right? And I went back and I looked at it, I was like,
yeah, coming off of the 82 season.
Sorry, everybody. This is what happens when I got to fill in for Goon.
Well, but so here's one of the things I think it's just going to be interesting. I don't know that it's even telling in any way. Maybe it will be for the upcoming season. But if I told you have to lay down $10 tonight on who will lead Penn State in rushing in this game, not in the season, who will lead Penn State in rushing tonight, right? Like that one.
You know what? I would still go with Nick Singleton.
That's because my buddy's like, really? I'm like, I do. I think he'll get. I think right out of the gate he's going to be the guy this year. And then he threw at me and goes, "Wait, are you saying on the opening series?" I'm like, I don't know about the opening series, but I'm telling you, I think at the end of the game tonight, Singleton will be the leading rusher. And I went a step further, and because again I get all hyped up, and I'm like, oh, and he'll have 100 yards. He'll have 100 yards on the ground in Purdue tonight.
It would be nice to get that
out of the way in the first game.
Immediately off the schneid with the 100-yard rusher thing. But yeah, I think the other reason why if I had to lay down money on leading rusher, I would pick Nick Singleton is because I think he is going to be good to rip off at least one 30-plus yard game today. Because, I mean, that's what have we heard about him? What have we seen about him? I spoke to him as the National Gatorade Player of the Year. It's his ability to hit the hole and then turn on the jets. Like that breakaway speed as a runner is what we needed in the backfield.
And who is the defense that they're playing?
Yeah,
I mean, it was a defense that's susceptible to that type of big play as well. This is not Ohio State or last year's Michigan defense that Singleton and the Nittany Lions will be taking on tonight. So I think that one is going to be interesting. The other one I'll just throw out there, and again, if you have ones you want to throw at us, it'd be fun to take it up. But which team will have the most passing yards in this game tonight? And I think that's intriguing because it is strength against strength with Purdue, and certainly a terrific passing game against Penn State's very strong secondary, and then. Which should be a very good passing game if the offensive line can give just a little protection against a average at best defensive group for Purdue.
Well, let me turn it around on you a little bit, Ironhead, and ask if the answer is Purdue. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, and that's a very good point because. If Penn State jumps out to the early lead, right, I mean, then Purdue is going to have no choice. If you can get to a 2-score game in the second half, meaning Penn State's up by 14 or more,
right,
and it's not like Purdue's going to be running a whole lot to begin with, but, like, you can pretty much bank on the fact that it's going to be nothing but passes.
Right.
And, if you're giving up 30 yards a drive in passing yardage, that'll add up to something. And if Penn State's in control, yes, they'll be running the ball, presumably, if they can establish the line of scrimmage. Big if there. And so, yes, the second half statistics could end up playing out so that, yes, Purdue's passing stats would be substantially more.
Like, how can it get worse?
Penn State win
Is a dangerous question, but honest to God, like when you talk about establishing the line of scrimmage and run blocking, like truly, come on. I've hammered this stat so many times, but our rushing offense last season, if you look at the last 25 years of Penn State football, and probably back farther, the 3 seasons to which it was most comparable were 2014, when the offense had 65, or when the team had 65 scholarship players, and we were pulling depth defensive tackles to start on the O-line because you just needed a scholarship body.
Yep.
So you got that team, and then 2003, 2004, where like Michael Robinson was the leading rusher from the running back spot, right? Like those were some really bad teams. You don't want to be compared to any of those. So my point is, even when Penn State has not had great seasons or the record hasn't been sterling, the rushing offense has been a heck of a lot better than we saw last year. So they got to improve. Like law of averages says they got to improve.
Yes. How much they improve, and again, if you can get the couple of yards when you actually need it in the games that matter, that's where it's only time will tell, but that's going to be the difference between a 7-5 type of season or a 10-2 campaign. I mean, that's you've got to be able to get those tough yards when you need it in the games that matter. Very consistently, Penn State last year was unable to do so. So a couple of things that I'm also just interested in tonight, because it's another one of the things we were talking about. And my buddy, who's very knowledgeable as well, is like, I could see Purdue having the lead at halftime because they're going to come out jacked up. And I'm like, I don't rule out the possibility that they could have the lead at halftime, and I certainly expect them to come out jacked up. I'm like, but how is Penn State not going to be jacked up? Like, this is a team that has all kinds of stuff to prove. You're not in the top 25. You are coming off, the two worst seasons since the early 2000s for the program, and
you got clowns on television other than Mike the Mailman picking you to go 7-5.
But listen, you also have a national audience tuning in, and you have Sean Clifford and PJ Mustipher. I will be very disappointed. Again, I will not be surprised if Purdue comes out and scores first or something. I'm not saying that, but man, am I going to be disappointed if you're watching on the screen and you're like, oh yeah, it just feels like Penn State's flat. This team cannot be flat. Not for this game, in these circumstances. Given, and I think Goon and I even talked about it last week. Like, there's that Pitt game, in 2016. There was no question that Penn State did not meet in the first half the Pitt enthusiasm level, and I was worried about it going into that game. I remember talking to people. I'm like, I just don't think I get James Franklin's approach in that every game, but.
Sometimes it's not
right, and you've got to understand, these guys, this is everything to them. This is the Super Bowl, the national title, everything is beating Penn State, and if you're not ready for that, and I felt like that tone that week was just the wrong one, even though I get it, and overall I agree with it with Franklin. It's like, no, instead of saying, we treat this like any other game, it's a MAC opponent, we have the same. I would have at least said, we better match the intensity because we know darn well what they're bringing, and we need to match. And we just never heard. Now, maybe in the locker room, again, I don't know what was being said, obviously, to the players. But, boy, you could see it. It was palpable that Penn State did not have the energy level that Pitt had at the start of that game. And I think as it wore on, Pitt's energy level waned. Penn State's picked up, but it was, not quite enough. A little too little, a little too late for Penn State. I just can't envision this tonight being that type of scenario. Again, no question Purdue's jacked up. But Penn State's got to be jacked up too.
Big difference between that 2016 team and this team. A big difference for Sean Clifford, especially. That team was breaking in a new offense.
Yep.
This one has had 18 months to get to know the system, to get to know the coach, and we have not had a whole lot of that kind of continuity at the OC spot. So, man, that's no reason to feel confident.
And there's a couple of other things that I think play into that for Penn State on the plus side. One is, and we've probably talked too much about it, but I do think it's a big component of why I'm as high on this team as I am and what it's capable of. And it is the leadership, and in particular with Sean Clifford and PJ Mustipher. I think that is a big deal to not just have leaders, but have leaders that have disappointment and a little extra appreciation. And not that you wish injury ever on anybody, but you talk to any athlete who, and I'm talking about big-time athletes who have had to face that type of adversity where they, and especially in a season where it felt like Penn State was on its way to something special last year, and then Mustipher and Clifford clearly have that feeling of unfinished business. And I just think that is big for this team. I think players around them draw on that. And then the other thing is guys like Nick Singleton that are bringing this new energy and this kind of new bravado and confidence into the locker room. So I think you have older guys who are like, yes, this is critically important. This is our last go-around. We thought we should have done it last year. You guys need to be with us. And then you have new guys coming in saying, yeah, up on my shoulders, I'm ready to lead us. Let's go to the promised land. Like, I think it's just a nice mix of enthusiasm from two different angles on this team. And it's why I will be both shocked and extremely disappointed if Penn State comes out not matching the intensity and the enthusiasm level of Purdue. Again, that's not to say they could match it and Purdue could still be up at halftime with a couple of great, throws and catches and all of that. You got to see how the game plays out. But if at halftime we're sitting there saying, yeah, man, Purdue's just ready to play and Penn State just looked flat, again, I'll be absolutely flabbergasted because that just doesn't compute to me. There's no way that can or should be, given everything that we just talked about.
Do you remember, I think it was the 2019 season, the Friday night game we played at Illinois?
Yes.
That's, again, I hope we're not dealing with a close game or a Purdue lead at halftime.
Right.
But that's a game that should give you some encouragement if you're a Penn State fan and we end up in that situation. Because that was not a very talented Illinois team.
Right.
But they were playing at home. It was an unconventional situation, just like this one is for Penn State. They had to make the road trip out there. And Illinois gave us absolutely everything they had in the tank.
No
Through the
question.
first 2.5 quarters of that game. And then Penn State hung 42 on them in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't have the reserve of energy, endurance, talent gaps started to grind on them over time. And finally, we had them where we wanted them. And boy, did the dam burst. So even if they give us the best shot they got in the first half, you still have to think, man, over time, that talent differential does a lot of work for you in college football.
Yeah, I firmly believe that going into the game tonight. I think Penn State is one of the most talented teams in the Big Ten, top to bottom on that roster. And I just think in a game like this, that needs to bear itself out. You need to go out and allow that talent to show itself. And again, how it reveals itself and what Penn State does with the approaches, I think all of that is going to be very interesting to watch because I think Penn State goes into this game wanting and to some degree needing to establish that ground game and get at least some air of confidence about what you can do with that element of the game. And, the other thing that's going to be interesting to see is just kind of how Penn State manages the game as it goes along, meaning, who do we see in there when the game's on the line at different points tonight? Who gets the carry when you do need those couple of tough yards? Which side of the line are you going to when you need that? And again, that could vary because, you have a weakness in one spot of Purdue's defense tonight. I mean, I'm not saying that this sets everything for the season, but I do think getting off to a good start tonight and getting some critical areas, feeling more confident and getting a little game experience under their belt where they're feeling good about it is vital to getting this program to where it thinks it should be.
Yeah.
And I think James Franklin and the coaching staff knows that. I mean, so I think part of this is going to be designed, as they go along, as all games are to some extent. But I mean, you're going to see early on. Okay, yep, we think we can expose this weakness here. We can expose that weakness there. Keep some things in the hip pocket. So I am really curious to just kind of see how everything develops tonight, and then we'll kind of carry over positive and negative we see from tonight's game into the rest of the season, and in particular in a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the burden there on both sides of the ball falls on our coordinators. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny, both on Manny Diaz, because he's the new guy, and Mike Yurcich, because inarguably he underperformed based on the hype and the salary after year one. And when you talk about, I think especially Ironhead, you're very, very good point about getting those O-linemen into the game, get your tailbacks into the game. You can set them up for success or failure with how you call that first offensive series.
Yep. And again, it as it always does, comes down to execution then too. You can only do so much to get the players
the microscope's
where they need to be.
Line this season, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I keep going back to it, but it's I mean, it would be wonderful if this offensive line
up in that interview.
Yes,
I was like, oh God.
But I think this offensive line, it should be at this point good enough to be an average Big Ten offensive line. It'd be wonderful to have it be a great.
I can't go that far.
I'm with you. I'm not. It's
pushed me to the thin ice already.
Well, it has to be proven, right? I mean, there's. You can't talk about it anymore, right? And we've been high. Goon and I have been high the last couple of seasons. I think they're going to make, and I think everybody now, even those that want to be high, and I'm one of them, would like to think that this group is going to take a step forward. But go do it. Like I'll believe in you once you start showing that you can do it, and that starts again with just having a good performance tonight against Purdue.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying, you got to go out and completely dominate even Purdue, but you've got to go out and get some big positive plays, get some protection in a game like this, build next week, and then, again, we'll see how it continues to develop, if it does throughout the course of the season. But, that group and how it plays, how it develops, to me is along with the overall health is going to be the determinant factor as to how far this year's team can go. And really, I think it'll, to a large degree, set up the prospects for the future in terms of the confidence that others, including other recruits out there, are going to have that, Penn State's on the right track, and that's a place that definitely want to go because bigger and better things are just around the corner, right? Like this season, we've talked about, it's not pivotal for James Franklin's job, obviously.
Yeah, definitely not.
But it is critical for the feeling that you have around this program and that momentum that, we keep talking about. And I just think, again, you've got to get to at least 8 wins, I think. And again, depends a little bit on how everything plays out. But I think probably 9 wins for fans to really start to feel good about, okay, this is the direction that this thing should be heading, and we can see now in the next couple of years that really big things, because 7 or 8 wins, and I'm not saying that if you have 7 or 8 wins, it's impossible for Penn State to go win a national title or get to the playoffs or whatever in the next couple of years, but it becomes a much taller hill to climb, and it's more difficult to get, and it's harder to get, I think, buy-in even from the players, right? I mean, at some point, and I think, to James Franklin's credit, and again, I'm on thin ice here, but it sure feels from the outside looking in like this thing is galvanized right now. You don't have a feeling around it, and I've talked to. I mean, I'm not around the program these days, so I used to be on the beat, and I used to have a real feel for this stuff. I don't, but I'm friends with enough people that are, and none of them say like. You can feel when there's little fractures when you're around it, and there's no feeling like that right now around this program that there's problems. But again, you have a third season where the record's disappointing. I mean, eventually fingers start to point. And I'm not saying publicly they're going to come out and our offensive line stinks, but internally, right? Like Goon talks about, you're going to have players. Dude, we're doing everything we can. Start upholding your end of the bargain so we can get this thing to where it's going. Right now, it does not feel like there's any of that within the program. And again, that is to James Franklin's credit, and the players obviously too. But I mean, that's not a given after the way the last couple of seasons have played out.
I mean, to that point, if you remember last year after the Illinois game, Goon was on the show here and he said, "I guarantee you there was a fist fight in the locker room." He said, after you have that kind of a disparity of effort from the defense and offense, somebody throws hands. And, I won't reveal our inside source. If anybody digs just a little bit, I'm sure they can figure it out. But Goon and I had that exact conversation with somebody who would know. And he asked him point blank, was there a throwdown in the locker room between the offense and the defense? And he said no.
Yeah.
And again, I get it, man. When the defense is pulling its weight and the offense can't get out of its own way, that is incredibly frustrating. And it's so hard to bite your tongue and not say anything. Not just say, hey, could you get 2 yards for us?
Yeah.
How many times did you run us out there? We just kept giving you
just once.
Get 2 yards? Could you do that?
One time.
And so for there not to be a blow up after that, man, it shows that that's a pretty strong locker room. And I think there are plenty of, as I hinted at, unflattering or non-positive things I could say, but that's something I truly believe that I think it's something Penn State's got going in its favor. So let me ask you this, Edward.
Yeah.
Give me a sneaky, important player for the Nittany Lions tonight.
Well, this is one where I could get burned too, but I am really – I'm just excited to see how they use Jonathan Sutherland and in situational downs and distances, because I think he is a guy that could become a real force, but in different ways in different games. And I'm just really curious to see, again, just kind of how they use him, where they line him up, and all of that.
I mean, he is going to get tested, because the guy I was thinking of when I asked you the question, it was Tyler Elsdon, the new middle linebacker, and for 2 reasons. First of all, Penn State has to make this offense one-dimensional.
Yes.
It's a very average offensive line, below average running game.
Which it should be able to do.
Yeah, you got to make it clear to them right out of the gate. Guys, you ain't running on us tonight. So that's important. He's important from that respect, making his first start tonight. But also, Sutherland and Elsdon are going to be in the crosshairs for Jeff Grellman in the game. They're going after those guys. If they're on the field, O'Connell is going to know where they are, and they are going to be targeted.
Yep.
Repeatedly.
Yep. And again, how they handle, but also how they're utilized. I just think I'm really just dying to see what Penn State does with its schemes defensively with Diaz. I think the expectations are probably a little ridiculously high. Some of the fans I've talked to, in terms of I think people are thinking he's inventing new blitz schemes that have never been thought of in football before. That being said, again, I'm excited about it, because I do think it's going to be a different defense than we've seen. And not saying the defense we've seen has been bad. I think it's going to be exciting to see those changes and some of the wrinkles that will be in this year's defensive package, and again, how some of the different personnel is
probably a little bit more of that Tom Bradley DNA in him. Keep everything in front of you and just play,
solid fundamental football.
Yeah,
and that works well as long as you tackle well, and that's the other thing I want to see tonight. And listen, it's not
practice anymore. What are you going to do?
Right, exactly. It's not just a Penn State problem. I mean, it's a college football in general problem. But if, again, you're going to be a 10 or 11 win team, you're going to be making those short tackles.
Do you think Alabama tackles
much more often than not?
I bet they do. I bet Saban's got like 4 Alabama State cops outside the practice facility, and if anybody from the NCAA shows up, they, I don't know. Maybe they found something in a search of their car. Maybe ought to move on to Auburn.
Carry on. Yes, I don't know. It is going to be just fun to see what Penn State does on the defensive side of the ball, period, tonight. And then, again, how different players are utilized and what the scheme is tonight. And again, the scheme tonight may be completely different than what we see next week, and that may be completely different than what we see against Auburn in terms of
I hope
how
next
they're trying
week
to
we
handle
basically run the defense at my high school.
It should be a pretty vanilla defense next week.
Let's not show too much against the Bobcats.
But I also think, tonight, going back to the offensive side, how do some of the young receivers step up as well? Because, it's almost it's like, you're going to miss Jahan Dotson. The question is how much, and are there some guys, and obviously you're hearing good things about a couple of the young receivers, and how quickly do they get acclimated?
I tell you, so I love college football. I watch a lot of it, and I actually watched a couple of Western Kentucky games last year. Like, Mitchell Tinsley's good. He's not just like, a Sun Belt Conference good or whatever they're in.
Yeah.
But the guy I am really excited about this year is I think Keandre Lambert-Smith is ready to take a leap.
I do too.
Because he is a guy who has shown a linear progression since he's gotten here. Like a lot of times, I talked a lot about the tight ends, I think, kind of hit the sophomore slump last year. Keandre didn't do that. He contributed, picked his spots as a freshman when he got his opportunities. He showed some growth as a sophomore, but absolutely had some lapses in concentration.
Yeah.
But you look at the little snippets they give you out of practice, they're very purposeful, right? So if you see a guy making a great leaping catch, high point in the football, they're showing you that because they're kind of hinting like, hey, this guy's doing this a lot. When you talk to the players, they said he's somebody who's been consistently flashing. He's not dropping the passes he was his first 2 seasons. I really think he's going to have a nice year for Penn State.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I just think, again, I think the passing game is you've talked about with the tight ends. I think they'll bounce back. I think the passing game. Yeah, I think the passing game is going to be fine. Again, obviously you got to get Sean Clifford protected, but I think everything is in place for that group to be very good and to continue to get better as the season progresses. And it'll be interesting to see if there are some different wrinkles there now that there's a lot more familiarity with for Sean Clifford with the offense, and that's the other part of it is
he's been here for 20 years and hasn't had the same
guy for just 2 years in a row. That's all, and I do think that there's there should be some payoff to that, and I think there's a reason to believe that that those two guys now will be able to have the type of relationship where you're be able to, when Clifford comes off the field, say, hey, did you see this? And he'll say, yeah, but did you also, I think they're both going to be able to give feedback to each other on what's happening, what they think will work, and I think there's going to be more of a simpatico relationship there in terms of, okay, let's get, as this thing moves along in each particular game, we see this is where we can exploit the defense. This is something maybe we need to shy away from today and all of that.
Question?
Sure.
This is the kind of question.
It's usually what I do, but okay, go ahead.
I hate these type of questions, which is kind of why I'm doing it. I want to see where you go with it. Do you think it matters, or do you care that both the coordinators are going to be on the sidelines versus either one of them or both up in the box?
Yeah,
by the way, so totally dumb question.
Well, Except, who cares? Except that. So this is let me give you a quick broad thing, and then I'll answer the specifics. So the broad thing is everybody's got their own style and what they feel comfortable with, and I think you got to do that. We've talked about it before with coaching styles, right? There's the bombastic, yelling, crazy guy, and that can be effective if that's who you are.
Right.
But you can be the Tony Dungy, more quiet, cerebral. Be true to who you are, basically, because eventually players will see through. If you're not the kick the trash can across the locker room guy, and you're coming in every game at halftime kicking the trash, it wears thin real quick.
Right.
Now, if that is who you are, right, players will respond to it within reason, and again, success rate and all of that plays into it. But I think you just have to be true to who you are. I get why coordinators.
Like Brian Kelly, finally, after all these years, is able to use his natural accent instead of putting on airs and trying to sound like a Yankee.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So I think that if a coordinator is more comfortable up in the booth, again, I don't think with modern technology and with all of the coaches that are on the sideline and can translate, I don't think it's an issue either way.
No, I agree.
If you ask me personally, and again, just personal bias, and part of it is undoubtedly it's just what I grew up with. It's what we had in high school. It's what I was used to seeing at Penn State, and it worked for those years. To me, it seems like being on the sideline, the disadvantage is you're not seeing the plays develop the way you do above. And there's no question, and I think that is a significant advantage for being upstairs, and it's why, at the high school level, well, at all levels, you have coaches upstairs, no matter what, whether they're coordinators. I personally do like the idea of having the coordinators on the field because I think there is a difference in that interaction when you're face-to-face and you can, it's when you're talking through the headset, there's interaction, but it's not as immediate. If I'm looking at you and you say, hold on, but let me tell you this, it's just different, and I think you also get a better feel for the players. Again, the advantages and disadvantages to both. You're not seeing the way the players are developing. You're relying on the players to be able to tell you, and the coaches upstairs obviously are going to tell you too. But I like the interaction because I think you also have a better feel then for if I'm upstairs and Sean Clifford's saying, it's working, we can go with it, then I'm hearing that's working, let's go with it.
Yeah.
If I'm not on the field and Sean's like, it's working, let's go with it, and I'm seeing him shrug his shoulders, it's like, wait a second. Dude, your body language is telling me what's not working there. It's just there's little subtle things that I think you can pick up. Now, can the coaches on the field pick that up and relate that? Obviously they can, and I'm sure they do. So again, in the overall scheme of things, I don't know that it matters all that much. I just think there has to be a good communication system either way with the coaches that are in the box, on the field, and with the players, and whether, again, it's the coordinator working with the other coaches on the field or it's the other coaches in the press box working with the coordinators in the field, you just have to have that good communication so everybody has a full sense of what's going on. You're reading the players, you're reading the dynamics that are happening in the game, if there's issues that are arising within the team, all of that stuff. And then, again, obviously you need to see how the plays are playing out and relate, hey, these guys are over pursuing every time we run. The cutback is going to be like, you need that type of analysis from up above. But it can be done by any good coach. It doesn't need to be the coordinator. So, long way of saying I don't think it really matters either.
Well, you took my dumb question, you ran with it, and you filled time like a
Yes,
pro.
I did.
Like a pro.
That's
I
what we
expect
do.
nothing
Kill
less.
time.
Before we get back to Penn State, I do want to just ask a question. What do you think about the backyard brawl?
Yeah, that to me, as weird as I think this is for Penn State and Purdue on a Thursday night, it is really weird to me that is. I love it.
It's cool
to start the
play.
season.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love that it's the first game. It's
Yep.
just weird again on a Thursday night.
Yes.
I do think Pitt. It's going to be interesting to see without Pickett, obviously, how that offense
And Jordan Addison, too.
still yes, how that offense is able to establish itself, especially early. But I do like this Pitt team that's coming back, and I think they're in a winnable conference.
Let me ask you. Okay, so opinions are all over the map on Pitt this year. What is it about them that had you feeling confident?
Well, two things. I do think this. I think the defensive depth that they have built up over the last 5 years.
Yeah, right.
Probably. I mean, I do think this is a solid defense, and
They bring a lot back.
Yeah, and Narduzzi's a good. I do think he's a good coach, as much as I like to bust on him. I think he's a good, basic, fundamental football coach. I really do, and I think he's
his
an okay
unique
recruiter.
style of bravado masking insecurity is like such a hand in glove fit for the culture.
Yes,
it
is.
They should just make him coach for that.
But yeah, so I think that defense, and listen, I do think not having Kenny Pickett there is obviously a big deal, but I do think having had him there and for the other guys to have watched how he progressed, how he went about his business, and, it obviously paid off in a big way for him in the end. So, listen, I don't think Pitt is – I think it'll be a battle for them to match what they did last season, obviously. But I also think the ACC is pretty ripe for the taking. I mean, outside of Clemson, I don't think there's a whole lot there.
NC State?
I'm buying them to a degree. I'm not buying them as like a top 10 team. I'm just not. I think they're going to be a good. I think they'll be a good football team. I'm buying that, and I think and they're a veteran team for sure. But again, to me, they're like if they can realize their full potential, I think they're an 11 to 20 team. And I'm not even sure I'd put them closer to the 11 than the 20 in that. And that's, again, if everything goes the way I think they're thinking it will go in terms of growth, development, all of that stuff.
So, funny thing to me about this backyard brawl game tonight, it says a lot about the state of college football. First of all, you've got Pitt and West Virginia playing an ACC Big 12 matchup, right? Like, that's kind of goofy. And they're both starting USC transfer quarterbacks in the game.
Yeah.
USC has exported more mediocre quarterback talent around the country in the last half decade. It's like, they're kind of like the Pittsburgh Pirates in a way, right? Like they develop the talent and then they ship it elsewhere.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah, I will be flipping. I guess
I don't know much about.
I
do not know much about West Virginia.
Yeah, I really don't know either. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot in terms of what they have coming back from last year. I just sat down and looked at that closely. But I like Pitt's chances.
Yeah. They're playing it all over.
And I will be watching that game a good bit. It's a 7:30 kick, or is that 7?
It's at 7:30.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So watch a good bit of the first quarter before dialing in on the importance of this.
Indeed. Enough discussion. I was just curious. I was curious what you thought.
Yeah, the other thing to tonight's game that I do want to see is how Penn State handles the return game, and if they can get some big plays generated with that, because that's another component here that I think again, if Penn State is going to get where it wants to get to this season, obviously you need all three phases doing well. I think the kicking game and the punting game are going to be fine, but getting the return game to be a little better than fine, I think would go a long way toward helping Penn State, again, try to get to that 10-win or better mark.
This is an interesting little back and forth I had with some folks on Twitter today. Do you like the idea of using one of your primary ball carriers as a kick returner? Because there was a lot of speculation, and I think this is going to be the case. Nick Singleton is probably. I think it's going to be, in all likelihood, Davenport and Nick Singleton are going to be our starting kick returners. And somebody made the comment.
I mean, Ford's almost a given.
Yeah. Yes. Right. They don't like using a guy like Singleton on kick returns because of the risk of injury. Didn't like it when Saquon Barkley did it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, to me, if there is risk there, but again, the risk is there every play. There's so many non-contact. Yeah, and how many guys do you see go down in non-contact drills, right, over the course of the season? So I am not what that feels like to me, and I get the argument the other way, and I'm not saying it's not without merit. When I'm looking at it, again, if I'm a coach, I'm putting the two best players that I think I can back there, and if that's my starting quarterback and starting running back, I'm being a little facetious there, but I'm putting them back there if those are my two best guys at returning kickoffs. Yeah. And to me, right, if you are saying that all three components of the game are equally important, and we need to put our best out there, like, you don't say, listen, we're not going to play our defensive end more than 4 series a game because we don't want to risk him getting hurt. I mean, why would you do that? And any play that you're out there, right? Yes, there's additional risk of injury. It feels like you're playing scared at that point, like you're coaching scared. Football is a contact sport. There will be injuries. You don't want to see them, but you know they're going to come. And to me, in any circumstance, you're not. I don't like the idea of playing I'm not going to get him hurt by keeping him out of this. If he's good at that, let him do it.
Yeah, so
it's my mind.
I agree, but I'll play devil's advocate. Is what I'm sure Russ would say, the guy who messaged me, is that the difference is when you're returning kicks, you open up the opportunity for a free runner to just get a full head of steam and pop the guy, and there's an increased risk of injury there versus the kind of contact you face, from any given snap when you just take it handoffs. Like, I get it, but I mean, how big a delta is there when you're actually looking at what is the percentage chance that your running back is going to get hurt returning kicks more than doing anything else you're doing in a football game? To me, I don't think it's that big. And as you said, you got a weapon, use your best weapon.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's that different than if you're like getting a swing. Like, do you take the swing pass out of the equation? Because if you're, and maybe even to some degree more because you're. You don't know where the guys are coming from. With a kickoff, you at least have a pretty good feel on, all right, I know the lanes that these guys are coming down on. Sometimes with those swing passes, you don't know that the guys I don't know. To me,
you just well never call a drag route again. If that's the that's the philosophy. So
I get the argument the other way, and there's a lot of people and a lot of very smart football people that will tell you that's that's not smart. That feels to me again like you're playing scared, you're coaching scared. And I just don't think you can afford to approach a game or a season that way. I think you go out, and it's the same thing. There was a lot of debate about, if you have a quarterback that can run, again, yes, the more hits he takes, and I think you've got to be a little bit reasonable about it. But generally speaking, if he's a weapon with his feet, then run it. That's part of what good is it to have a quarterback who is great at running if you never run him because you're scared he's going to get hurt? That would be like not sending out your pitcher because you're afraid of the arm injuries. That's part of pitching. Like, yes, that
is kind of the direction that
it is the direction. That's kind of why it's on my mind, actually. So I don't know. To me, which by the way, I didn't actually look to see because I didn't want to get too depressed, but situation. I'm trying to think how. If there was, I lost my train of thought here. But it was something with the. It'll come to me.
We're gonna unplug Ironhead.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted there. I shouldn't have let that happen. There's something with the.
We were talking about pitchers.
Yeah. And, the Pirates and the Dodgers. So the Dodgers supposedly, I didn't look this up. The Dodgers are supposedly more games over 500, or at least were at one point this week, than the Pirates have wins on the season. Like the number of games that the Dodgers are over 500 is more than the Pirates have in victory. So it is insane. And what the Pirates are doing is actually pretty ridiculous. Come to think of it, too. But
I wasn't going to say it, but yeah.
Anyways.
We're winding down the show, Ironhead. We got to give our predictions.
Yeah, I'm always, glass half full, and the closer we get to both good and I think are getting a little carried away.
By the way, if Penn State starts 4-0, you're done picking them for the rest of the season.
Yes, guaranteed.
They got to earn the first 4.
Yes.
But then you got them from there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So I do think Purdue's going to be able to score some points tonight. That's a really good offense, and I think Penn State will do reasonably well against it, but I think there's going to be some opportunities there, and Purdue will capitalize. I ultimately think Penn State just has more talent. I think Penn State does establish to some degree the line of scrimmage tonight, and I think Penn State pulls away a bit at the end. I've been going back and forth on exactly where I want to land on the final score, but I'm going to set it at Penn State 41, Purdue 24. Yep. 41-24.
Wow. Okay. Well, now I feel a lot better because I said we had to film this early because Kevin left on a 2-week honeymoon. So I've had plenty of time to ruminate on the score prediction that I made a couple of weeks prior.
By the way, I told my buddy an hour ago I had it at 31-20, just so you know.
Yeah, okay.
But I've talked myself. I've been thinking of more through, and I've talked myself into 41-20.
So I picked 37-20. And I think my thinking is very similar to yours. I like the matchup, as I said on Tuesday, of weakness versus strength.
Yeah.
For Penn State versus Purdue. Purdue has an average offensive line, a below-average running game. They are breaking in a new group of receivers.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Penn State has what I think is going to be a very stout and very deep defensive line. I really do expect the defensive line to surprise some fans with how effective they are and how many different guys they can rotate in who can make plays and be disruptive. And then the strength of the defense, I think we can both agree, is secondary. For sure. And so when you can generate pressure from your front four and your secondary is the strength of your D, and you're going up against a team that is breaking in your new receivers and that you are going to be able to force to be one-dimensional, just like what I was talking about with that Illinois game, they came in with a full head of steam. They gave us the 2019 Illinois game, by the way, not the one that we'll never speak of again.
Yes.
Over the course of 4 quarters, man, college football talent will happen. And that's why I think with an improved running game and a second year in Mike Yurcich's system for Sean Clifford, I could see it playing out there. Now, I will add a proviso that 2 days ago I listened to Matt McGloin's podcast.
Yep.
And after listening to 45 minutes of McGloin and Hannafin talk about this game, I was basically ready to go dip my head in a tank of sulfuric acid. I was like, oh my God, we're going to get smoked. But anyway, I'm sticking with it. I got Nittany Lions 37-20.
Yeah, I just think, I'm much like you. I just think that the talent differential is there in Penn State's favor, and I think this team does have a bit of a chip on its shoulder. It should have a chip on its shoulder after the last 2 seasons, and I think rightfully not being ranked. But I think that again, you ought to be using that in the locker room, and with the talent level that's on this team and the senior leadership. To me, this team ought to be able to go out and take care of business at least tonight, and then again we'll reassess when we reconvene next week and figure out what we think we might know moving forward. But always in the back of my mind will be what I thought we knew last year, after the first quarter of the Iowa game that we clearly didn't. So,
and what did us in?
I will be much more.
Lack of depth.
Yeah, for sure, and preparedness.
Sure.
Combination, but yes, but yeah, they go together. So, and I think that's the other part is I do think, hope and think that the coaches learned some things from everything that transpired last year too.
Not to.
And listen, that is the one thing I will give. Not the one thing. One of the things that I will give James Franklin credit is he has been pretty good throughout his Penn State tenure in correcting. He may correct one thing and then something else goes wrong, but he has been pretty good about, hey, first half woes, let's get those corrected. Maybe takes a little longer than fans would like, but I mean, it gets addressed and it gets taken care of. And I just have a feeling that this team will be a little more prepared if it does face some unforeseen circumstances with injury or anything like that in the upcoming season. So, all right, that's what you got. Go enjoy the game. It's game day. Penn State and Purdue tonight. We'll be back on Tuesday to break it down and talk more about it. And until then, be good, be safe, and go State.
Go State, beat Purdue. We are.